My name is Alexander. I'm 33 years old, and what I'm about to share destroyed every foundation of reality I once believed in. 6 months ago, I was a senior software developer at a tech firm in Seattle, living in a modern apartment overlooking Lake Union, dating occasionally and planning my future. Today, I sleep with weapons nearby, install motion sensors everywhere I go, and flinch at the sound of scratching. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, but the psychiatrists don't believe what caused it. How could they? I barely believe it myself. It began innocently. A reunion with my college friends planned to celebrate 15 years since we first met. We were once inseparable. Marcus, brilliant but always anxious. Diane, logical and fearless. Her husband Eric, who she met in our study group. Kevin, the skeptic who'd become a science journalist. And his sister Rachel, who joined our friend group later. We hadn't all been together in one place for nearly a decade. I found the cabin listing, Blackwood Retreat, Ultimate Wilderness Experience, advertised as newly renovated but historically significant, built in the 1890s by early settlers in the Olympic Mountains. The photos showed rustic luxury, hand-hewn beams, a massive stone fireplace, modern kitchen, and windows showcasing endless forest views. The reviews were stellar, though sparse. The final line of the description should have warned us. For those seeking complete isolation from the modern world. The drive took longer than expected. Seattle disappeared behind us as we wound through increasingly remote roads. Cell service vanished 2 hours in. The GPS failed 30 minutes later, forcing us to rely on printed directions from the owner. The final 5 miles followed an unmarked Forest Service road that deteriorated with each curve. "Are we sure this place exists?" Rachel asked as our SUV bounced through another pothole. "It's just remote," I assured everyone. "That's the point." We arrived at dusk. The cabin stood in a small clearing, larger than the photo suggested, a 2-story structure with a wraparound porch and detached garage. The nearest neighbor was reportedly 7 miles away. The silence was absolute. No distant traffic, no human sounds whatsoever. The owner had left keys in a lockbox with a handwritten note, "Enjoy the solitude." Emergency satellite phone in kitchen drawer. Weather radio on counter. No cell service or internet here. Town of Millerton is 22 miles east if needed. Not recommended to hike after dark. Trails are unmarked and dangerous. Wildlife activity has increased recently. That first evening felt magical. We built a fire, prepared an elaborate dinner, opened wine, and reconnected as if no time had passed. Kevin brought out old photos from college. Rachel shared stories of her archaeological work in South America. Marcus, always the quiet one, seemed especially relaxed away from his high-pressure job in cybersecurity. Around midnight, Diane stepped onto the porch for fresh air. She returned moments later, her expression troubled. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" Eric looked up from stoking the fire. "I don't know. Like a scream, but not human. Not an animal I recognize either." We laughed it off. Coyotes. Maybe an owl. The forest plays tricks with sounds. We continued drinking and reminiscing until nearly 2 a.m. before separating into our rooms. I took the loft bedroom with its large window overlooking the tree line. I awakened suddenly at 3:17 a.m. I remember checking my watch. Something had pulled me from deep sleep. I lay still, listening. The old cabin creaked and settled, but beneath those normal sounds was something else. A rhythmic noise from outside. Scratching, deliberate and patient, like claws methodically testing the wood. I crept to the window and peered out. The half moon provided just enough light to see the edge of the clearing. Nothing moved. The scratching stopped. Then at the precise moment I was about to return to bed, something emerged from the tree line. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It moved on 2 legs but was hunched forward. Tall, impossibly tall, at least 7 feet. Its proportions were wrong, arms too long, joints bending in unnatural ways. It paused at the forest edge, its head swiveling as if scanning the cabin. That's when I saw its face, elongated with a prominent muzzle, but with eyes set forward like a human's. They reflected the moonlight with an amber glow. I dropped to the floor, heart pounding. Seconds later, I heard heavy footsteps on the porch directly below my window. They circled the cabin methodically, testing, searching. Then came a new sound, sniffing, powerful inhalations, like a predator tracking scent. I didn't sleep again that night. At breakfast, I debated whether to mention what I'd seen. Before I could decide, Rachel spoke up. "Did anyone else hear something walking around the cabin last night?" She asked, pouring coffee with a slightly trembling hand. Kevin laughed. "The famous Blackwood beast, I'm sure." "What?" I asked. "The caretaker in town mentioned it when I got extra firewood yesterday. Local legend about some creature that stalks these woods. Been stories since the settler days." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "I heard something too, around 3 in the morning." "Let me guess," Eric smirked. "Tall, wolf-like, walks on 2 legs? Classic regional folklore. Every remote area has their version of a werewolf or wendigo." Diane didn't share her husband's amusement. "I saw scratches on the porch support beam this morning. Deep ones, about 7 feet up. We investigated together. The marks were undeniable. 4 parallel gouges in the ancient wood, too high for a bear reaching up, too deliberate for random damage. Nearby, partially obscured in the soft earth, was a footprint unlike anything I'd ever seen, elongated like a human's, but with distinct claw marks at the toes. Kevin, ever the journalist, photographed everything. "Probably a bear," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. We decided to hike to a nearby ridge that afternoon. The trail was overgrown but passable, winding through increasingly dense forest. None of us mentioned the scratches again, but I noticed everyone staying unusually close together. The view from the ridge was spectacular, endless green mountains fading to blue in the distance. As we prepared to head back, Marcus pointed to something on a rock face about 100 yards away. "Is that a cave?" A dark opening was visible in the cliffside, partially obscured by vegetation. Something about it seemed deliberate, not natural. "Let's check it out," Kevin suggested. Rachel hesitated. "We should head back. It'll be dark in a couple hours." Kevin was already moving toward it. Just a quick look. The cave was actually a mine entrance. Old support timbers still visible, though rotting away. A weathered sign warning, "Danger, no entry," hung askew. "Early 1900s silver mine," Kevin said, examining the entrance. "Probably abandoned during the Depression." "We shouldn't go in there," Rachel said. "Unstable old mines collapse all the time." "Just a few feet," Kevin insisted, switching on his flashlight. Reluctantly, we followed him just inside the entrance. The air turned immediately cold and damp. The beam of Kevin's light revealed a tunnel extending about 30 feet before a collapse blocked further progress. But what caught our attention were the walls, covered in strange markings. Some looked like primitive cave paintings, stick figures and animals. Others were more disturbing, symbols and patterns that seemed intentional but indecipherable. "These shouldn't be here," Rachel whispered, her archaeologist training evident in her careful examination. "These aren't mining markers. Some of these look ancient." Most unsettling were the recent additions. Fresh claw marks gouged into the rock, identical to those we'd found on the cabin porch. "We need to leave," I said, suddenly aware of how quiet it had become. "Now." No one argued. The hike back was tense, made worse by the rapidly fading daylight. The forest felt different somehow, watching us. Twice we stopped, certain something was moving parallel to our path, just out of sight. We reached the cabin as the last light disappeared behind the mountains. That night we stayed close, keeping the fire roaring and conversation deliberately light. No one suggested splitting up to sleep. Around midnight the power flickered, then failed completely. "Probably just the generator," Eric said, finding flashlights in a kitchen drawer. Marcus volunteered to check the backup generator in the detached garage. I went with him, unwilling to let anyone go alone. The 20-yard walk to the garage was the longest of my life. Wind had risen, causing tree branches to scrape against each other like skeletal fingers. We were halfway there when Marcus grabbed my arm. "Listen," he whispered. Through the wind came a sound I'll never forget. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It reverberated through the clearing, causing the hair on my neck to stand. "Run," I said. We sprinted to the garage, fumbling with cold fingers to unlock the door. Once inside, we slammed it shut, breathing hard. "What the fuck was that?" Marcus's voice shook. I had no answer. The generator was intact but out of fuel. As Marcus refilled it from a gas can, I peered through the small window facing the cabin. That's when I saw it. The creature, fully visible in the moonlight, standing upright at the tree line. It was even more terrifying than my glimpse the previous night. Its body was a grotesque hybrid, the general shape of a man but covered in patchy, matted fur. Its legs bent backward at the knee like a wolf's, ending in pawed feet with long claws. The arms hung almost to the ground, ending in hands that were almost human, but with elongated fingers tipped with curved talons. The face was the worst, a wolf's muzzle and jaw, but with a flatter forehead and those eyes, intelligent, calculating, filled with malice. "Marcus," I whispered, "don't turn around. When I count to 3, we're going to start the generator and run straight back to the cabin. Don't stop, don't look back." "It's out there, isn't it?" His voice was barely audible. 1, 2, 3. The generator roared to life. We burst through the door and ran. I heard it immediately. Heavy footfalls pursuing us, gaining with each second. The cabin door seemed impossibly far. I risked a glance back. The creature was 10 feet behind us, running on all fours with unnatural speed. Its jaws were open, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Faster!" I screamed. We hit the porch steps as the cabin door flew open. Kevin standing there, eyes wide. We dove inside. Kevin slammed the door just as something massive crashed against it. The impact shook the entire cabin. "What is it? What's out there?" Diane screamed. Her answer came in a howl that sounded like a tortured human voice forced through an animal's throat. A sound of rage and hunger that penetrated the walls as if they weren't there. The assault on the cabin began in earnest, scratching and pounding at every door and window. We moved furniture to barricade the entrances. Rachel found a shotgun in a locked cabinet and loaded it with shells stored separately. "Does anyone know how to use this?" she asked. No one did, but I took it anyway. For hours, the creature circled the cabin, testing our defenses, sometimes retreating into the woods only to attack from another direction. Around 3 a.m., a window shattered in the kitchen. Eric was closest. We heard him yell, then a sickening sound of tearing fabric and flesh. By the time we reached the kitchen, the creature had pulled him halfway through the broken window. Diane screamed and grabbed his arms, but the beast was stronger. With a final jerk, it pulled Eric through the opening and into the darkness. The sounds that followed will haunt me forever. We sealed the kitchen as best we could, retreating to the living room. Diane was catatonic with shock. Rachel tried the emergency satellite phone repeatedly, but got no signal. Kevin barricaded the broken window with the refrigerator, while I stood guard with the shotgun. Dawn came after an eternity. The attack stopped with the first light. We waited, listening, until the sun was fully visible before daring to move. Outside, a gruesome trail of blood led from the kitchen window into the forest. There was no sign of Eric. We knew we had to leave immediately. The SUV was untouched. We loaded what we could and piled in, Diane still in shock between Rachel and Kevin in the back seat. I drove while Marcus navigated with the paper map. We were 2 miles down the road when we found the first tree blocking our path, a massive pine that hadn't fallen naturally. The cut marks at its base were unmistakable. "It's hurting us," Marcus whispered. We turned around, trying another Forest Service road that the map showed connecting eventually to the highway. 3 miles later, another blockade, this time a deliberate arrangement of boulders and logs. "That's impossible," Kevin said. "It can't be intelligent enough to—" "We need to go back to town on foot," I interrupted. "The map shows a ranger station about 7 miles south. We stick together, move fast, and travel only in daylight." No one disagreed. We packed what we could carry: water, energy bars, the shotgun, and a few emergency supplies. The hike was grueling, made worse by constant vigilance. Every snapping twig made us freeze. We found more disturbing signs along the way, claw marks on trees that seemed to be following our path, arrangements of stones that couldn't be natural. 4 hours into our hike, we heard something crashing through the underbrush, parallel to us. We froze. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of movement. Not the creature from last night, but something equally terrifying. A human figure moving with inhuman speed and grace, wearing what appeared to be animal skins. "There's more than one," Rachel whispered. We altered our course, moving faster, no longer caring about noise. The ranger station appeared ahead just as dusk approached, a small cabin with a radio antenna. Our relief was short-lived. The building had been ransacked, the radio destroyed. Bloodstains, some old, some fresh, covered the walls and floor. As darkness fell, we barricaded ourselves inside, but the station offered little protection with its broken windows and damaged door. The attacks began almost immediately, more coordinated than before. We heard them communicating, guttural sounds that approximated human speech. Kevin was taken next. Something grabbed him through a window, so fast we couldn't react. His scream cut off abruptly. Through the night, they taunted us with sounds, Kevin's voice calling for help, then screams, then silence. By dawn, only Marcus, Rachel, and I remained. Diane had simply walked outside during the night, as if in a trance. We heard her speaking softly to something in the darkness. Then nothing. The third day became a desperate run through the forest. We abandoned the trails, moving downhill constantly, hoping to reach the highway. Rachel fell behind, her ankle twisted on a root. She urged us to continue. I refused. Marcus went ahead to find help. He never returned. Rachel and I found a shallow cave as night approached. We sealed the entrance with rocks, leaving only a small opening to watch. They found us just after midnight, 3 creatures moving on all fours, sniffing the air. 2 were the wolf-like beings from the cabin. The third was different, more human, wearing a headdress made from a wolf's skull. They circled our hideout, communicating in those terrible, almost human sounds, testing the entrance, waiting. I had 1 shell left in the shotgun. Rachel looked at me, understanding in her eyes. "Not like this," she whispered. "We'll make a run for it at first light." Separate directions? When dawn broke, we saw they had gone, or so we thought. I exited first. The forest seemed empty. Rachel followed. We made it perhaps 50 yards before they attacked, from above, dropping from the trees. I fired my last shell at the nearest one. It fell, howling in pain, black blood pumping from its chest. The others hesitated just long enough for Rachel to run. "Go!" I screamed. "I'll hold them!" I fought with everything I had, rocks, sticks, my bare hands. It wasn't enough. The last thing I remember is being dragged across the forest floor, my consciousness fading as the creature that looked almost human leaned over me, its breath hot on my face, speaking words I somehow understood. "You belong to the forest now." I awakened in Millerton Regional Hospital 3 weeks later. A hiking group had found me unconscious by the highway, naked, covered in claw marks and bites, severely dehydrated. I had no memory of how I'd gotten there. The official report concluded we were attacked by a bear or mountain lion. Eric, Kevin, Diane, Marcus, and Rachel were listed as missing, presumed dead. Search parties found no trace of them or our cabin experience. When I mentioned the creatures, doctors diagnosed me with traumatic delusions. I was released after a month of recovery and psychiatric evaluation. I returned to Seattle, tried to rebuild my life. For a while, I thought maybe they were right. Perhaps my mind had manufactured the impossible to protect me from the conventional horror of a wilderness animal attack. Then the dreams began. Every night, running through endless forests, hunting with heightened senses, exulting in the power of my transformed body. I would wake tasting blood. A week ago, I found claw marks on the inside of my bedroom door. Last night, I woke to find myself standing in my kitchen, naked, dirt under my fingernails, with no memory of how I got there. In the sink was a clump of fur caught in the drain, neither human hair nor any animal I could identify. The full moon is tomorrow. I've locked myself in my basement with enough chains to hold me. If you're reading this and I've disappeared, don't come looking for me. And whatever you do, stay away from the Blackwood Retreat in the Olympic Mountains. Some places don't belong to us anymore. Some places hunger. And sometimes what you bring back from the wilderness isn't entirely you.